Thank you, Benny. You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Benny, for inviting me. So my session today is called Power BI Tips, Tricks, and Hacks. First, a little bit about myself. So my name is Rui Romano. I'm from Portugal. I lead the business intelligence team at DevScope. I'm a Power BI addict, more data engineer, not so data scientist. I'm also a Microsoft MVP on data platform, and you can follow me on LinkedIn, or if you have any questions, just drop me an email. I will be glad to help you out. So this session, the Power BI tips and tricks and hacks, it's a collection of some tips and techniques that I use in my daily job and that I use in my team. That I want to show you. It's a session that is a little bit fast-paced, so don't try to understand in detail how I'm doing this. I can share the scripts with you in the end, so just drop me an email. I will share all the code that I'm going to show you with no problem. It's more focused on productivity tips. So I'm a fanatic in productivity. So I'm always trying to find ways to save time. So I'm very lazy. At this session, it's not an introduction to Power BI. So I will assume that you all know what is Power BI. This session is not also a deep dive session, although I will show some code. And it's not very focused on DAX and Power Query advanced techniques. So it's more on productivity and how you can make your life easier. So if you have any questions, just throw them in, and I will try to answer it. If I see that I'm getting out of time, I will leave the questions to the end. Okay. So the first tip that I want to give you, and this is something that I see a lot of times working with other Power BI professionals and in customers, is the REST API. Actually, this is not the slide that I want to show you. It's this slide. So sorry, I switched the slides. Is the REST API. So the REST API, you should really know what you can do with the REST API. And this is really, really powerful. So you can do a lot of things with it. So you can do automation, you can do embedding, you can do monitoring. So there are a lot of things that you can do. I will show you 3 examples that I think that they are very powerful. So these REST APIs, you can explore what you can do by just accessing if you Google REST API, Power BI, you will find the URL very easily. And they are divided by admin APIs. You have APIs for data sets, you have APIs for reports. So you have a lot of things, and you should really know that this exists. And you also have some PowerShell modules. That is one for Microsoft. I also have one that I publish at GitHub. It's called Power BI PS. I mostly use, and all the code that I'm going to show you, it's using my module. The reason is just because it's easier for me to change and to evolve, because I have. But you can, everything that I'm going to show you, you can also use that. You can also do it with a Microsoft official module, because this PowerShell module, behind the scenes, it's just doing some REST API calls. Okay. So let me start with the first example of what you can do. I don't know what happened, but I kind of switched the slides. So let me start with one of the most important ones. It's monitoring your Power BI tenants. And to do that, the only thing that you need to do is you need to use the REST API to get the metadata, the audit logs, and then you can build a Power BI report to monitor everything. And if you are working in a company or you are working in a team that you have a Power BI tenant and you are not looking into this, you are literally driving blind. So you are probably giving more attention to the users that don't deserve that attention. You are probably giving more attention to the reports that are not the actually most important reports. Or maybe, and I see this happen a lot of times, you think the report that you think is the most important one, it's not. Maybe the most important one is a report that exists in a personal workspace in a user personal workspace. And the most important report is not the report that gave you more work. It's the report that actually it's more used. It's more used by inside a company, is being shared, is being used every day. Those are the most important reports. And for example, when you want to move and you want to evolve a Power BI dataset, it's very important for you to know which datasets are actually being used every day. And this information is you have access to it. Of course, that you also have out of the box inside the workspace, you have the usage activity monitor, and that is actually very useful, and it even gives you a little bit more information than the one that I'm going to show you. But this is the problem with this activity, the usage metrics report. It's just for this workspace. If you want to have a complete tenant view, if you want to see what's being used inside the personal workspaces, what's being used on every workspace inside your company tenant, this is not enough. And to do that, let me show you what you can do. First of all, you need to do some code. You need to somehow fetch this data, and you need to fetch this data from the REST API. So the first script, it's I call it Power BI fetch audits, and you can see that this is some straightforward script. So it's 52 lines of code. And this, and I'm doing that in PowerShell, but you can do this in Azure Function. You can do this in .NET. You can do this in Java, in Python. You can do this whatever you want. I normally use PowerShell because I'm more comfortable with PowerShell. So the first thing that I'm doing in this PowerShell code is getting the authentication token. And for that, I'm using device code authentication. So device code authentication is a way where I can, when I run this, let me just show you, I will delete the file. If I try to run it, so I don't have any username and password in my script. So I'm using device code authentication. Device code authentication gives me an URL that I can go into the browser. I put the URL of that asks me for the code, and I just authenticate with an account, and then the PowerShell script will save into a local file. It's not the username and the password. It will save the token that will give a permission next time it needs to run to go and fetch this data. So this is the first operation. And then what I'm doing is I'm just starting from 2 days ago. And by the way, this API, that is it's called the Activity Events API in the admin. So you need to be a Power BI admin to execute this Activity Events API. So what I'm doing is I'm going 2 days before, and for each day I'm getting all the logs for that day, and I'm saving those logs into a folder. So I have a loop, and inside this loop, I'm getting the audit logs, and for each day, I'm just saving that into a file with the day and the date into the file name. So in here, in the data audit logs, I will have actually I will have a date by each, so a file for each day with the entire audit logs. Now, and this is the first script. So and you can have this script running every day, and every day you will save the activity events for this day, for all the days actually. And now, this is one part of the operation. Now, the second part is the catalog. So I also want to get what exists inside my tenant in terms of all the data sets, all the reports, all the data sources that my data sets connect to. And for that, I need to build another script. I call it fetch catalog. And this one, I'm also using the admin API. So So in the Power BI PS module, I have this command that it's invoke Power BI request. And in here, I just need to provide the authentication token, the URL of the resource of the API that I want to get. So this maps to, I go to the REST API. So this will map. So let's just to show you. So here, get groups. So this is the resource. So, and if I want to get data sets, it will be /datasets. If I want to get reports, it will be /reports. So I'm just getting all the workspaces that exist in my tenant. I'm also expanding to get all the data sets inside those workspaces, all the dashboards, all the reports, all the users, and this will give me also the personal workspaces. It's not only the workspaces that I have access to, because I'm executing this with a Power BI admin account, so this will get everything. And then for each workspace, I'm just getting 2 extra informations that I don't have in the admin API. The first is the data sources. And I will show the report and you will understand better why I need this. So the data sources will give me all the data sources of my data set. So if the data sets connect to a SQL database or to a file or to a SharePoint, because this is a very important piece of information. Imagine that you just want to know every data set that connects to a production database or to a development database or to a file system. I actually had a customer that just want to monitor if anyone built a data set that connects to the local file system, C or D or C file system. He wants to get an alert because it was a best practice to never use local file system and always use OneDrive or a data lake data source. So, and you can do that with this information. And also it's a refresh history. Unfortunately, you don't have this in the admin API. So you need to get to every workspace by workspace, you need to get the refresh history by dataset. So after you have this information, so in the end, I will have a folder for each day with a snapshot of everything that exists inside my tenant. You can build an awesome report like this. And I can share the report with you, no problem. But first thing, usage. So what happens inside my tenant? So what's the activity inside my tenant? And cross-referencing the log count, but the reports created. So reports created is a very good measure that you need to measure when in your Power BI tenant. That will say that if your users are active, if they are creating reports or not. The distinct users, so you can have a lot of logs, but you have a small amount of distinct users. Log count per hour, so what's the most active hours inside your Power BI tenant? A table just showing an heat map between the days and the hours, so you can see that mostly, for example, on Sunday and Saturday, I have less activity, and most of the activity is on the evening. And of course, the most active user, and this is Power BI. So I can click on a user and I can see which workspaces, which apps is using, which operations is doing. So I can also see one thing that is very important in those large enterprise. So who is exporting data, export activity events, and I can see, click on the export and see actually I should have a problem in here. I don't know what's happened, but I should have any problem on the data set. So, but you can click on an operation and you can see which users actually executed that operation and where that operation happened. So this, and you even have extra level of information in these audit logs, like where is the user coming from? Do they come from a browser? Do they came from mobile? So are they using Excel? Are they using Internet Explorer or Edge or Chrome? So this you have a lot of information in this audit log. So and you can explore it, and you can explore it at the tenant level. And of course, the catalog. So I was showing you the usage, But then you also have the catalog, and the catalog is what does exist inside in all your tenants, in the personal workspaces. How many workspaces with data you have, how many dashboards, how many reports, who created those reports, who are the most active creators of those reports, what's the distribution between the workspaces, the Office 365 group. So there is a distinction between the V2 workspaces and the Office 365 groups, and also the personal workspaces. Are people creating a lot of things inside the personal workspaces? And for that, you only have this information when you go through the admin APIs. So otherwise, you don't have it. And of course, the data sets. So how many data sets do I have that connects to SQL? And I can even go here and search for an actual server or CRM, actual server, and it will find in all the data sources inside my data sets, what data sets connects to this data source. So this is very valuable information. And lastly, but not least, the roles. So the distribution of the roles inside all the workspaces. So in every workspace, you have the admin, contributors, member, and viewers. And if I just want to know, for example, where my user is configured, I can filter and I can see that I am added as an admin in all these workspaces. So, and you can have this information with two scripts. They are not, so one is a very simplistic one, 50 lines of code. The other one is a little bit more complex, but you can have this information. And if you are not getting this information, you are losing data because the audit logs only gives you 7 days of data back. So if you are not collecting this data, you are losing very valuable information for the future. I can tell you that. Okay, next tip, also on the REST APIs. So if you have Premium or Power BI Embedded, you can actually build an entire DevOps ecosystem with Power BI. And a DevOps is a way to publish, so you have your developers working on the PBIX files and you put it on GitHub, for example, and you use Azure DevOps with pipelines that will automatically deploy and have a branch for dev, a branch for production. That is actually a very good session by Daniel. Daniel is the creator of Tabular Editor. That is a must watch. So if you have a Power BI Premium instance, you should see the session. And you can use Tabular Editor and Azure DevOps to completely automate everything. That is also deployment pipelines. I'll be honest with you, I found them too simplistic. So on those more enterprise level scenarios, it's not good enough. For example, you cannot use shared data sets with deployment pipelines. But if you have Power BI Premium, you can build something like this, and it's my recommendation. If you don't have Power BI Premium, then you should at least have everything in OneDrive. So if you don't have Power BI Premium, you need to back up your code. You need to have some kind of history of all of your developments. And if you put everything in OneDrive, you can use the REST APIs to have like a DevOps of the poor, something like that, to automate the publishing. Let me show you one example. So imagine that this is a OneDrive folder or a network share where I have 2 data sets. So I have 2 Power BI data sets in here, and I also have 2 reports. So these 2 reports are live connected to the sales data set, and the HR report is live connected to the HR data set. And this is actually also a best practice. Split your data set from the reports. There are many blog posts on how to do it. So, but if you are putting everything inside a PBIX file, don't do it. Split it because it will make your life easier. But normally, this is one way. Normally, when I don't have DevOps or I don't have GitHub, this is what I do. So I split, I have two sets of files, data sets and reports. And what you can have is a configuration file like this, where you will specify the workspaces. So I have 3 workspaces in here. I have a workspace for the data sets. For each workspace, I have a set of permissions. So I'm adding myself as an admin to this workspace. I'm adding a security group as an admin on the datasets workspace. On the reports workspace, I'm adding just a group as the admin, and then I'm going to add another group as viewer. So this is actually something that wasn't possible 3 months ago. The viewer operation in the REST API, you couldn't assign a viewer into a workspace. You need to do that with the UI, but right now you can do it with the REST API. So I have, first I declare the workspaces. Second, I declare the datasets. So for each dataset, I have an entry where I will say, okay, this dataset, when I want to publish this dataset to this workspace. And after the publish, I want to make sure that the parameters are set to this configuration. So for example, on the sales, I want to target in the production environment, I want to target the production database. On the development environment, I want to target the development database. But I only want to have one version of the development. I don't want to have a PBIX for dev and a PBIX for the production dataset. So I just want to have one set of files, but when I publish, I could be developing targeting to the quality database, but when I publish to production, I want to change the parameter of the data source to target to the production database. Actually, this is another tip. So if you develop a Power BI dataset, if you connect to any kind of data source, that data source should be parameterized. So you should use parameters. Because this, if you don't use it, you cannot use this kind of techniques to change the parameter using the REST APIs. And then later, I have the reports. And the reports, I want to say that all the reports that exist inside this folder, I want to publish those reports into this workspace, the HR reports, and I want to bind the reports to a HR dataset. And for the sales, I want to publish to another workspace, and I want to bind to the sales dataset. So I have this configuration. This is also good to declare your project. So for each project, you will have the workspaces where the project depends to. And then you can have a generic script that I call it publish. And this script just goes, it has 3 sets of operations. So first, it starts by reading the configuration, and then it will try to create the workspaces. If the workspace already exists, it doesn't do anything. Then it will try to publish the datasets. So it will actually do the same thing of you going to Power BI Online, importing a dataset and changing the parameters. So this will just get the dataset, and it will call the import Power BI file operation. And in the end, it will just do Power BI dataset parameters. And later, the reports, and this is a little bit more complex, but because there is a limitation in the API that if you try to upload a report with the same name, but if it's targeting a different data set, it will duplicate the report. So I need to do a little trick. That is, I upload to a temp file because I want to keep the ID. I want to keep the report ID. I don't want to create a new report with a new ID because the users could have created bookmarks and filters and personalized views, and I don't want to lose this. So the trick here is you upload to a temporary file, a temporary report in Power BI Online. You import the file. Then you use a special operation, a special API. It's called update report content, where I take the content of the temp report and I overwrite the original report. And in the end, I do report rebind. I will talk about this rebind operation because it's the third tip that I want to give you. But the rebind is just making sure that that report is targeting the data set that I want them to target. So if I run this, you will see that this is taking all the data sets, all the reports that exist inside this inside that folder, and it will publish to the final workspaces. So in the end, I will have those three data sets, those three workspaces. So I have a workspaces with the data sets. I have a workspace with for the reports of HR, for the reports of sales, and just to show you, I go to the sales data set, for example, and I wanted this is a little bit slow, but I was going to show you to change a parameter in the configuration and then publish, but I don't know why this is taking so long, so I will skip that for the sake of time. But it works. So the idea is you have everything on a configuration file, and then you don't publish anything manually. So every time the developer make a change and you want to publish the report, you just need to run the script, and the script doesn't get tired, so it never goes wrong. So if you want to really make sure when you publish a new version of the development that it is targeting the production data set, without worrying about if you need to do the rebind or if the Power BI report is actually targeting the final data set, this will make sure that it will always happen. So I highly recommend you to use this kind of approach when you have more than one person working inside a project, and you just want to make sure that everything will go. The publishing operation is safe. I will stop this. But DevOps and Power BI and REST APIs, this is one example of what you can do with it. The final one, it's the rebind reports, and this is something that I do a lot. So, and why you want to do this, the rebind of reports, it's imagine that you have a collection of reports, like 20 reports connecting to a development data set, and then you create a new data set and you want to rebind all those reports into the production data set. For this, I have an example. So I have a workspace that has two data sets. And if I go to the lineage, you'll see that data set A doesn't have any reports connected to. And if you see data set B, so data set B has all these reports connected to it. So it has, and from different workspaces. So they are not, the reports are not inside this this workspace. So you have two ways to do the rebinding. So the first one is the manual, and the manual is completely supported. And what I mean about manual, let me try to create a new report just to show you what I mean. So let's create this report, test. So now I have this report in here, test, that is connecting to dataset B. So manual, so I want to rebind this report to dataset A, because this is the new dataset. So I made a new development and I published the dataset. I don't want to impact my users. In the end, I want to do a rebind after I make sure the dataset is ready to production. So the manual, you just open the report, you copy this URL, just close the scripts. Or ad hoc. So I have a script. It's a very simple script. where I just put the URL of the report that I want to rebind. And it has a parameter that is the dataset, the target dataset ID, where I want to bind the reports. And the other URLs, it's a list. So I can do this for a collection of URLs or of reports or just one. Let's just make just one. And the script, what it does is it will iterate all those report URLs. It will parse the URL to get the group ID and the report ID, because the APIs, they don't receive as a parameter they don't receive as a parameter the reporter ID. They receive the group ID, the workspace ID, and the report ID. So I need to parse this. This is this line of code. And then there is an API, it's called rebind. And the rebind, I just need to provide him the dataset ID where I want the report to be rebinded. So if I run this, and so it's rebinded. And if I come back and see the lineage, you will see that now it's targeting dataset. I'm not sure if it was on dataset V or dataset A, but just to be sure. So if I take dataset A ID and I put it in here, and again, now it's targeting dataset A. So manual rebind is like this. So now imagine that you have 50 reports created and you don't even know where are those reports. That is something that you can do, that is the impact analysis. So if you click here, you can actually see everything that is connecting to this dataset. But the problem is that you don't have an API to get this. So you don't have an API available, supported to get this. So what I did, this is completely unsupported, so use it at your own risk, but it works. And I can tell you that it saved me a lot of efforts. So what I did was, so I was curious. So when I click this is an API. This is a website. So it has APIs behind the scenes. So what I did was I hit F12. And if you hit F12 and you come here and you click it, you will see that it calls APIs. So, and there will be an API. It's this, the related content API. And this related content API, it gets exactly what I want. So if you go and see this response, this JSON file, this will get you all the workspace with the workspace ID and the report IDs that are connecting to this dataset. So this internal API gets me the information. So I wondered if I use the same authentication token of the REST APIs, the supported REST APIs, if I can call this internal API to get this data. And in fact, it works. So I created another script. Okay, I call it report rebind auto. And this is way smarter. So this report rebind auto, it has two parameters, the old data set and the new data set. So the old data sets, let me just make sure that I'm using. So the old data set in this case is data set B. So I want to go to data set B to find out every report in my tenant that connects to data set B, and I want to rebind it to data set A. So this is the only parameters that I need to give. You also need to give the internal API URL. How do you find out this internal API URL? I just showed you. So you click it, you do the network monitor, you click on that button, and you will find out that internal API URL. So is this first, if you see the headers, so this is the internal API URL in here. So you copy paste this into the script. And what the script does, it's not that complex. So first, it needs to also find another thing on this internal API URL. Sorry, I forgot to show you. Let's click again. So this related content, it's calling something model / this model ID. So the model ID, I'm not really sure what this is. This is kind of an internal dataset ID. You need also to find out for the dataset, for the actual dataset ID, you need to find this model ID. And there is another API. So you need to call two internal APIs. The first one is the one to find the model. So on this one, you can call, it's the same internal API, but it's Power BI metadata, group metadata. On the folder object ID, you pass the old workspace ID, and this will get you all the models that exist inside of that workspace. And then with the models, you can find which data set is which model has that data set. And when you have that model ID, then you can call the related API. And with the related API, the related content API will get you everything that you need. So you just need to iterate the related reports. And for each report, you call the rebind API to bind the final to the new data set. So let me just run, so just as a recap. If you see this impact analysis, all the reports are connected to dataset B. And if I run this, and if the demo gods are with me, it will work. So it will do all the rebind. And now if I do the impact analysis, no report is connecting to dataset B, and all the datasets are connecting to dataset A. So and even the personal workspace. So if the report it's on your personal workspace, it will even do the rebind on the personal workspace. So this can, if in those kind of operation, and actually I have to do this because I have a situation where I needed to, I don't know how, but the data set got corrupted. It wasn't a production development scenario. It was a data set that got corrupted. And that data set has connected to it like 100 reports. Now imagine finding those 100 reports and doing the manual rebinding. And after doing this script, this was like that. So, and it was perfect. So it really worked I didn't have any issue with it. So this is something that can be very, very handy. But one more time, it's completely not supported, but it works. Okay. Do I have any question? I don't know.
No questions so far, Rui. So keep going.
How much time do I have?
25 minutes, but if you go a few minutes over, it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. So on the REST APIs, this is all I got. But the main tip is just know about this, know what you can do with it. It can, as I just showed you, this rebind API, this saved me days of work. Okay, so REST APIs, it's really, really important for you to know and to use. Now, with a more simplistic tip, but this is something that I also see a lot of people, even more experienced Power BI developers not doing it, is the Power BI templates. So inside my team, this is actually a big deal. I will show you my team Power BI. Because Power BI templates with a conjunction with themes, it can be a huge fast track to new development. So every time I start a new Power BI development, I always start with the company or the team template. And the templates can have common tables like the calendar, the timetable, a system table with the last refresh dates and the owner of the data sets, the description of the data sets, the documentation of the data set if you want. But most importantly, the theme you can embed a custom theme inside the report template. And the theme is much more than colors. So you can, in the theme, you can define the configuration for each visual that you want to give. You can say, for example, you can see that this table, it's prettier than the default. At least for me, it's prettier. Maybe for you, it's not. But you can customize a lot of things much more than colors. So just know about this report template. So this is my team report template. So it has a layout built in. So when I add the customer data into this Power BI template, I don't need to be an expert in report layout. I just need to drag and drop the new fields into the canvas, and the report will be pretty by default. And because this is using the themes, if I change, let's say, if I change the colors, so if I change it to red, everything will adapt. So so you can have the layout. You can even, something that I also do is I put a collection of icons, and I can easily copy and paste new icons to the layout, and I have icons per industry. So you can do a lot of things in this. This can literally make your new developments way easier and have a more professional approach right from the start, at least better than the default. Okay, so templates, just know about it and use it. And if you are working in a Power BI team, in a consultancy, or in a customer, or in a company, make sure that you have your base default themes to start on. Now, let's go back to the X. Copy report layout. And this is a technique that I also use it a lot. So, and the idea is to copy the entire report layout between two Power BI files, two Power BI PBIX files. And this is not just copying the visuals. So we are talking about copying the entire layout. We are talking about copying the filters that were defined, the bookmarks. And if you are an adept of bookmarks, you can have an entire application with bookmarks. So if you want to copy everything from one file to the other, you don't have a built-in solution to do, out-of-the-box solution to do that. You can actually select all the visuals and copy between two windows, but that doesn't copy the bookmarks, that doesn't copy the filters, so that doesn't copy anything than the visual. That doesn't copy the themes. So how can you copy this between two files? Let me show you. So I have two Power BI files. I think I opened it. So I have this source Power BI file, and it has filters applied to it. It has bookmarks defined. So I want to copy this entire thing from the source report to the target report. And on the target report, I actually have the same set of tables, or not. I see, no, I actually have the original tables plus two more, but this doesn't matter. Of course, that if the fields doesn't exist, if you have a visual, let's say if I have this card that is connecting to sales amount, if sales amount measure doesn't exist on the target file, it will give an error, but the layout will be there. So you can then switch the measure to a new one, but the layout it will be kept. So how can you do this? It's very easy. So to do this, you go to the file. I normally use 7-zip because I don't need to rename this to a zip file, because a PBIX file is actually a zip. So you extract these two files into a folder. And then you go to the source report, and inside the source report, you have a folder that is called the report. So this is the content of a PBIX file. Here you have a set of files. So the most important one is this layout. If you open this in Visual Studio Code, you will see that this is a JSON file, and it's actually the report development. So you will have a section. So this is the page. This is the actual report development. So you will have everything in here. The bookmarks, you'll have the filters, everything is on this file. So if you copy this entire content into the targets, so on the targets, I have a layout, but let's just delete this and copy from the source. Then you go back to the folder and you make sure you delete this file, the security bindings. If you don't, it will give you an error. Then you select all the files, send to zip, and then you rename this as PBIX. And if I open it, this will open. If you remember, the target report has a new set of tables. So you will see that the model will have those new tables. So this is the actual target report with the entire layout, with the bookmarks, with the filters, with everything. So this can be very, very handy to move layout from one Power BI file to the other. There are a couple of alternatives. So in the past, before doing this, I publish it online, I do a rebind, and then I download back to a Power BI file. But this is way quicker, and you don't need to depend on anything online. You don't need to publish anything. So you can do everything locally, and it's very, very, very useful. I hope that this someday in the future is available out of the box. Okay, but that deletion of the security bindings, it works. It works in the current version of Power BI Desktop. Maybe in the future it will stop working, but until now, it's very, very handy, and it's something that you can use.
Rui, one question before you go onto the measure table. We do have a question that goes back to the rebind AP, the rebind approach. So Arno is saying that the rebind approach is fine to rebind reports, but if you have a shared data set that users connect to for self-service, you don't want to be telling people to connect to the new data set every single time. What do you do in this kinds of situation?
Actually, I'm not sure if I understood, but for example, this is using shared data sets. So on dataset A, it's on rebind datasets workspace, but I have another report that is on another workspace that is using shared datasets connecting to the dataset on the rebind datasets workspace. So the rebind operation works with shared datasets. So you can, when you do the rebind, you just need to specify the dataset ID of the new dataset, and the rebind will happen. So if I come back here and say now the other way around, go from dataset A to dataset B, this will do the rebinding. So of course that if you do this, if the user, imagine that you are the Power BI developer of the dataset, but you are not the developer of this report, sales one. Of course, that you will affect the report that wasn't created by you, but it is something that if you are the owner of the dataset and you just want to upgrade a new version of the dataset that you don't want to keep the ID, then the rebind it's the best way that you can do to just rebind all the reports that are connecting to dataset to one dataset to the other. But I'm not sure if I understood if I answered your question or not.
Arno made a comment on it because the other dataset has a different dataset ID. The developer will locally in Power BI Desktop get a connection error and needs to connect to a new dataset.
Yeah, but this is only online. So when you do the rebind, so right now I'm on the workspace. So this sales one, if it now there is a drawback in here. When you do the rebinds, for example, the download PBIX file stops working.
Mm-hmm.
So if you if the developer, the developer uses the Power BI desktop to develop this sales one report, then yes, that report that he has locally, it will be connecting to the old data set. And if you delete the old data set, you will get an error. You need to do the rebind with Power BI desktop. But online, this is not. So online, if you go to sales one, now it's targeting, it should be dataset B, because I just made that rebind to dataset B, and it's working. So it's a metadata operation that you do online. So, but yes, if a Power BI other than you have a Power BI dataset locally, a Power BI file with a report locally, you don't have a way to do that rebind inside the Power BI desktop file. Actually, you have. I won't have time to show you. You can do it, but
it probably involves breaking into the JSON files underneath. Yeah. Okay.
It works, but it has some problems. But you can do it. But this is only online operation, so you are not doing anything on the files. And actually, unfortunately, you lose the ability to download the file. Because of this.
Okay, thank you.
Can I move forward?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. So another tip, and I call this the measure table. This is old one, so I've been doing this like since the beginning of Power BI. Right now with calculation groups, you solve an old problem that is the dynamic format. So the measure table is basically a technique that you use where you specify the measures as a table, and then you use a switch statement for each measure. You will say, so let's say measure one, you will say that it will target an actual measure, sales amount. So measure two or KPI two, it will target another measure. You can even write DAX in here. So you can do this also with calculation groups, but you will lose something that I found very important in this kind of approach, that is having actual measures. Because imagine that you want to build a table, and a table like this, and you want to control the order. If you do everything in calculation groups, you will need to control the order in the calculation groups in the ordinal. So, and that will be static. So if you want to show two different report pages with different orders, you cannot do it. But the calculation groups also solved something, and that's what I actually want to show you. That is, even with the switch, you can do dynamic formatting. And be aware that if you use this technique, it will have a performance hit. So if you have a lot of measures in here, I think there was an update recently to the switch, a performance update. I haven't tested it. That solved a performance issue with a switch, but this can be very, very useful. Let me try to show you the final result. So two things that you can do with it. You can have a report that the measure is an actual filter, and you can filter, so let's say, sales amounts, and you have a single report that can answer multiple measures. So sales amount, and I want to see sales quantity, and I want to see sales growth. And you can see that the format is getting applied. And I'm not using the format with as a text. So this is the actual applying the format. I will show you how to do it. And nowadays, you can even, with this technique, you can leverage some of the new stuff that is available in Power BI. So let's say I want to do anomaly detection on all my KPIs. So I just need to have this. I have a line chart, and then the line chart, it was in this month update, you have a find anomalies feature that is a machine learning out-of-the-box feature inside Power BI that will detect anomalies. So and I'm detecting anomalies for all my measures. And I didn't do anything other than doing that measure as a table. I'm even using smart narratives and is detecting smart stuff with my reports and showing me. And another thing that you can do that it's only possible with this is building a report where you have the measures as a table. So I'm showing all my measures. I'm showing the value of the measure, the last year, the daily max, the variation to last year. So this is not a Picasso, an abstract painting. This is doing a normalization. This is something that I do a lot. So imagine that I want to see and correlate the correlation between sales amounts and sales growth. They are in completely different axes, but if you normalize the values between 0 and 1, you can see the correlation between the two and plot it very easily. So and this kind of dashboards, they are really, really useful for those more advanced analytic scenarios where you just want to explore and see correlations between measures. So, and to do this is very straightforward. What you need to do is you have your standard model, then you build a data table, a custom data table where you specify the measure code, the order, the measure name, a group by. So I'm kind of the area of the measure. If it's a sales measure, it's a purchasing measure, an HR measure, and the format. So this wasn't available before calculation groups. So before calculation groups, if you wanted to apply custom formatting, you can only do it in text. So right now you can do it in the dynamic format. So, and you do this, and in the end, you need to create a measure that is the value. And for the value, for each measure code, you need to bind it to the actual measure calculation. And then you have the last year that they all depend on value. So that's the thing. So if you see the year to date, they all depend on the value. So to solve the dynamic format, what I'm doing is you need to have a calculation group, and that calculation group, you just need to, it only has one calculation item that I call apply formatting. So if I remove this, you will see that I lose the format. So it will start showing the growth as a decimal value. If I filter, it will do the apply format. So this can be solved very easily if you go to Tabular Editor. If I have time, I will speak a little bit about Tabular Editor. But in Tabular Editor, you just create a calculation group. And in this calculation group, you only need one. The expression of the calculation group is just a selected measure. So a calculation group overrides the measures that it's a way for you to kind of override measure. So, but I don't want to do that. So on the expression, the actual value, I want to keep it as selected measure. I don't want to do anything. But on the format string expression, I have some DAX in here that is, okay, for this, only these measures, I don't want to do this for the other measures because otherwise it will apply a format to a percentage that I don't want. So these are the only measures where I want to apply this. If it's not any of these measures, it will just select return the default format string of the measure. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the selected measure. So I do a select value for the actual measure that is selected. And if I have a value, so if there is actually a measure selected from that measure table, I'm doing a lookup to get the format. And if the format is defined, then I just return the format. So, and with this, and if you filter, of course, that this has a drawback that you will have on your model two tables. So you will have something that I call dynamic measure extensions, something like that, and you need to filter on this. But this can solve a very important thing on this dynamic measure approach, that is applying formats to the measure dynamically. Okay, so dynamic measure, know about it. It can be very useful. Be aware that it has a performance hit, but it can literally give you some advanced analytics into your existing models very quickly, and it's very powerful. So another tip, and this is more a Power Query tip. I want to show Benny. How much time do I have?
Roughly put about 5 minutes.
Okay. This is just a quick tip. I also have, I think I have another YouTube video. I will put the link on the slide to where I show this in more detail. I call this the file proxy, and the idea is really simple. So every time you connect to a files, so if it means file system, network share, always create a proxy query. So what I mean about the proxy query, in this file I have one example of it. So I'm connecting to SharePoint. So instead of directly, so I want to do customer classification that is on an Excel file, instead of directly connecting in the source to the SharePoint, not the best one, this. Instead of connecting to SharePoint, I always connect to the files, to a query that just gives me the files. And this query, it's not loaded. It's a unloaded table. It just gives you the files. And it starts by getting to SharePoint and getting the files. But the biggest advantage of this approach is if you want to change the location of the files, let's say from SharePoint to a local file system, for example, for development purposes, because if you want to, if you have a lot of files, and if you are working with SharePoint, you need to download the files. It will be slower. So if you have this technique like a files query, you can just connect to another location, to a file system, to a data lake, whatever location you want, and everything will be working. So you just need to uncomment or comment and put just replace this first line, and everything will work. Because in Power Query, a file is always has this property. So it has the binary. It's the content and the name. So a file is always have these two columns, and it also has a folder that you can filter. So file proxy, it's really useful when you are working with files. So every time I work with files, more than one type, I always use this technique. So I will just go through the slides just to I won't do any more demo because I'm running out of time. So Excel and Power BI. So for me, Power BI has one of the most amazing integrations with Excel. It's not just export. So you can actually analyze a Power BI data model in the Excel, and it's something that even if you don't like it, it's not that I'm an Excel addict, but I've lost many wars in the past where the goal of the Power BI or the BI project was to kill Excel, and I always lost. So nowadays I usually embrace this, and I try to bring and instead and tell the users about, okay, don't export data. You can connect an Excel data pivot table into a Power BI data model, and this is how you should do it. But actually, you can do a lot of smart stuff with this with Excel integration. Let me just overview it. So one of the things you can do data export. So you can have tables in Excel that actually has a DAX query inside this table. So and to generate these tables, it's really easy. You just build a Power BI pivot table into an Excel pivot table into a Power BI data model. You double click in a cell. This will create. It's giving me an error, but this will create a table like this, and then you just need to put the DAX query in it. You can even use DAX Studio Query Builder to build the DAX if you are not comfortable with DAX. It's a nice solution to do paginated reports. So if you don't have premium and you want to do a paginated report like this, that will have the listing of data that comes from a Power BI data model, you can use Excel to do that very easily. You just need to put the pagination there. You build a pivot table, and it will automatically do the pagination for you. So it's a really, one more time, this is something that if you want to automate stuff, you need to do macros and VBAs. It's not that is a best practice, but sometimes it's the only tool that you have to and instead of building things manually, why don't do it? So Excel and an Excel integration is really powerful. So the app navigation, I will just show you really quick. When I mean about the app navigation, you can be very smart about this app navigation. So when you publish a workspace to an app, you have these navigation links. And sometimes people only think that this is just for reports, but it's not. So first, you can have emojis, which is nice. Second, you can have things like you can embed Power App inside these customer navigation links. So you can have a Power App that will write to a database, and then your Power BI data set. So in this case, I'm doing customer classification. I want to classify a customer, and if I refresh the data set, or if my data set is in direct query, I will see that editing right away. It's kind of a write back. So you can embed a Power App inside your Power BI navigation. You can call a Power Automate to refresh the data set without giving permissions to the user to refresh that data set. So imagine that you just want to, okay, I want to give a way to my users to refresh the data set, but I don't want to give him or the user, the end user's permissions to as a member or a contributor to my workspace. So you can build a Power Automate flow. It's really easy that you can allow your users to call. And now if I go to data sets, you'll see that the data set is refreshing. So this Power Automate is just calling the refresh data set connector. So refresh data set is another thing that you can do. You can also embed reports inside this, reports from other workspaces. So one of the things that I usually do is self-documenting a Power BI data model. So I have a link to other report in another workspace where I filter this existing data model, and I have a self-service documentation of my model. So you can link, you can have embedding other reports in here, and you can also use Power Platform and Office 365 and have even forms to allow your users to give you feedback about your Power BI development just by using the navigation links. Another smart example of navigation links is one well-requested feature. You want to build one Power BI app for your CEO to show multiple reports from multiple workspaces. You can have a Power BI workspace with no report in it. It's only a dummy dashboard. And then with a Power BI navigation, you will embed reports. And you can apply filters, you can hide the Chrome. So I'm using the secure embed, not the published web, of course, but I'm showing multiple reports from multiple workspaces, from multiple apps in one app. And if you see this app, this application, it doesn't have anything. It's just a dummy reports. So I believe that I ran out of time. I will just ask you and to show you a final example. If you open this URL, tinyurl rr-eval, just open it. I will show you an example of Power Platform collecting feedback in Microsoft Forms. This is also something that I also like to collect feedback. I'm using Microsoft Forms to collect the feedback. It's completely anonymous, of course. And I have a Power Automate, a Microsoft flow, that every time someone answers this form, it will trigger the flow. It will store the data in a SQL database for persistence, and it will send to a push data set in real time the data. And I'm going to show, if I open the dashboard in here, session evaluation, this will show in real time the data as you answer the form. So, and this is an example just to close of something one of the greatest advantages that Power BI and this Power Platform and this ecosystem has is for me, is one of the biggest differentiators between the competition. It's making use of all these pieces, and when you mix all of this together, you can have real time, you can have forms, you can have automation, you can have RPA, robot process automation with it. So thank you, and I don't know if we still have time for some questions. Drop me an email if you want to for me to send you the code of what I show you. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Rui. That was